Behind the gentle and reassuring facade of Little House on the Prairie, Melissa Sue Anderson brought a quiet, contemplative presence to the role of Mary Ingalls, while Michael Landon, as Charles, served as the series' anchoring force. On screen, everything appeared simple and almost effortless. However, this balance was not always maintained once the cameras stopped rolling. As production continued, so did a certain kind of attention that Melissa Sue could no longer overlook, an admiration that slowly transformed into something far more difficult to conceal. So, what truly transpired between Melissa Sue Anderson and Michael Landon in those private moments away from the set? Stay with us as we explore the pivotal events that altered everything, including the reason the creator of Little House departed even before the very first episode aired. The world of Little House on the Prairie did not emerge fully formed as the serene, comforting universe audiences came to love. Instead, it was built deliberately, piece by piece, from a collection of stories already steeped in history and lived experience. Loosely adapted from the novels of Laura Ingalls Wilder, the series placed the Ingalls family at its center, settling them on a farm along Plum Creek near Walnut Grove, Minnesota, and chronicling their lives through the late 1800s. At the heart of the narrative was a family that felt grounded and familiar. Charles, Caroline, and their daughters Mary, Laura, and Carrie, brought to life by Michael Landon, Karen Grassel, Melissa Gilbert, Melissa Sue Anderson, and the twin actresses Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush. On screen, they moved as a cohesive unit, each performance fitting seamlessly into the next, creating a world that felt stable and almost untouched by external forces. Nevertheless, achieving this required considerable effort behind the scenes. Back in 1972, television producer Ed Friendly, encouraged by his family, secured the rights to Wilder's novels from Roger Leah McBride. He then brought in writer Blanche Hanley's to shape the story into a 2-hour pilot, something capable of introducing audiences to this world in a single sitting. From there, Friendly turned to Michael Landon. Friendly wanted to remain faithful to the books, but as one might guess, asking Landon to direct while adhering strictly to that vision would have been impossible. Landon agreed to direct, but only on the condition that he could also step into the role of Charles Ingalls. That decision set the tone for everything that followed. What began as a shared vision did not remain that way for long. Disagreements between Friendly and Landon grew increasingly apparent as the project advanced, with each man clinging to a different concept of what the show should become. In the end, Friendly stepped away, leaving Landon with full creative control. From that point forward, the series' direction rested entirely in Landon's hands. The pilot aired on March 30th, 1974, drawing from Wilder's third book, Little House on the Prairie. It opened the door, but it was only the beginning. By September 11, 1974, the full series arrived on NBC, and what started as a single story quickly expanded into something much larger, running until March 21, 1983. Even as the years passed and the cast changed, the world of Walnut Grove kept moving, adjusting just enough to continue. By the 9th season, with Landon gone, the show carried on under a new title, Little House, A New Beginning, followed by 3 post-series films that attempted to bring things to a close. At first, not everyone was convinced. Early reviews leaned in a different direction, often comparing the show to The Waltons, which was already finding its footing with audiences. But over time, something about Little House on the Prairie began to settle in. As Al Trescany noted, the audience stayed, ratings held, and gradually the conversation around the show changed. What did not land right away started to connect, and the series found its place, not only during its original run, but long after, continuing through syndication and onto streaming platforms, where new viewers kept discovering it. Before the Prairie, before Walnut Grove, before Mary Ingalls ever became a name people recognized, Melissa Sue Anderson was simply a young girl growing up in Berkeley, California. Born on September 26, 1962, to James and Marion Anderson, she was the younger of 2 daughters, with her sister Maureen being more than a decade older. Life did not stay still for long. By the time she was 7, her family had moved from the Bay Area to Los Angeles, placing her closer to an industry she had not yet fully entered. When her parents divorced when she was 13, she was raised by her mother in a Roman Catholic home, holding onto a structure that would follow her through the years ahead. Her introduction to the camera came early and almost by accident. A dance teacher noticed something in her and encouraged her parents to find her an agent. From there, things picked up quickly. Commercials for brands like Mattel and Sears came first. Small appearances that quietly built her confidence. Then television followed. She appeared in projects like The Brady Bunch and Shaft, taking on brief roles that did not last long on screen, but were enough to get her noticed. It was not a loud or dramatic ascent, just a steady climb, one opportunity leading into the next. By the time she was 11, that steady climb turned into something much bigger. She auditioned for Little House on the Prairie and stood out among hundreds of other girls, landing the role of Mary Ingalls. It was the kind of moment that could define everything that came after, even if she did not fully realize it at the time. As Anderson settled into the role, her presence grew. She brought a quiet strength to Mary, something that made the character feel real in a way that went beyond the page. Early on, the writers held back, waiting to see what she could do. Once she proved herself in that first year, the material followed, and the episodes centered on her became heavier, more demanding, and harder to carry. What began as a gentle look at family life started leaning into deeper, more painful storylines. Much of that weight landed on Mary. One moment she was the soft-spoken older sister, and the next she was facing loss after loss, from going blind to enduring tragedies that kept piling up. This gave Anderson room to stretch as an actress, but it also came at a cost. She later opened up about how, after a while, it felt like her character was either standing in the background or trapped in one hardship after another, and that rhythm started to wear on her. Still, the role made her. Little House on the Prairie ran for over 200 episodes, becoming one of the most watched shows of its time, and Anderson grew up right in the middle of it. From age 11 to 19, she moved through those years on screen, her performance earning her an Emmy nomination in 1978, the only one among the main cast. Off-screen, though, things were not always as simple as they looked. The long hours, the demands of a role, and the environment around the production began to leave their mark. When her contract ended after 7 seasons, she stepped away, returning only briefly before the show closed out. In 2010, she put those memories into words in her memoir, The Way I See It, a look back at my life on Little House. Away from a prairie, her path continued, though it did not follow the same level of attention. She took on roles in films like Happy Birthday to Me, a sharp contrast to the image audiences were used to, along with projects like Chattanooga Choo Choo and Dead Men Don't Die. On television, she appeared in The Equalizer, a series created by her husband, Michael Landon. Smaller roles followed, including appearances in Alfred Hitchcock Presents, before she gradually stepped back in the 1990s to focus on raising her children. By 2022, she made it clear she was not planning a return to acting anytime soon. And yet, no matter how far she stepped away, the image of Mary Ingalls remained, with certain dynamics behind the scenes leaving an impression that did not fully fade once the cameras stopped rolling. For a show that felt so calm and grounded on screen, the set of Little House on the Prairie carried a very different kind of energy once the camera stopped. At the center of it all was Michael Landon, not just as Charles Ingalls, but as the one holding creative control behind the scenes. He ran the set with clear expectations. No matter how young the actors were, they were expected to show up on time, know their lines, and carry themselves with a level of discipline that did not bend. Actress Alison Arngrim later wrote about this in her memoir, describing a work environment where no one was pampered. There were no shortcuts, no special treatment. Landon's presence was felt in every part of the show. Over time, that level of control created tension behind the scenes. Even Ed Friendly, who had helped bring the project to life, found himself pushed out as creative differences grew. The cast itself did not always move as smoothly as the families they portrayed. Melissa Gilbert and Alison Arngrim were known to be close, but Gilbert's relationship with Melissa Sue Anderson was far more complicated. In her memoir, Gilbert described Anderson as someone who kept to herself, someone she could not quite reach. Others on set noticed it too. describing Anderson as distant during their time working together. Karen Grassel later spoke about moments that made people uncomfortable, including how personal matters sometimes spilled into the workplace. Landon had begun taking a supplement he openly credited for boosting his energy. Not long after, the truth became public. He was involved in an affair with Cindy Clerico, a young stand-in on the show. News of the relationship spread quickly, and the effect on the cast was immediate. Landon's wife at the time, Lynn, was known to several members of the cast, making the situation harder to ignore. Grassel later reflected on how difficult it was to process, especially knowing there were children involved. Catherine McGregor already had a strained relationship with Landon due to disagreements over pay and treatment, and this only added to it. For Melissa Gilbert, it cut even deeper. She had seen him as a father figure, and after learning about the affair, that image changed. She kept her distance from him and chose not to attend his next wedding. As the series moved toward its end, Walnut Grove did not fade quietly. In the final chapter, the town was destroyed, blown apart by its own residents. Behind the scenes, the reason was practical. The set was dismantled to ensure it would not be reused. The situation between Karen Grassel and Michael Landon brought tension closer to the surface. On screen, they stood as the steady center of the Ingalls family. Off-screen, that unity did not always carry through. Grassel wanted her contract to reflect the importance of her role. When she pushed for a raise, Landon did not see it the same way. From her account, he believed her pay should stay closer to what the younger cast members were earning. At one point, he even told her that her character was not a favorite with viewers. Communication became limited, and her screen time began to shrink. Even after she eventually secured a raise, the feeling between them did not return to what it had been. By season 8, she stepped away. Still, Grassel could see the pressure Landon was carrying. He was directing, producing, and making sure the show stayed on track. She described him as someone constantly on edge, juggling responsibilities that never really paused. Years later, about 5 years after she left, Landon called her himself, wanting to reconnect and asking if she would consider returning for a Little House special. She agreed. A few years later, around 1990, Grassel reached out again, and he responded by asking her to call. Their conversation touched on the show, memories, and his growing family. Not long after, Landon was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Within a year, he was gone, passing away on July 1, 1991. For Grassel, what stayed with her was the fact that they had the chance to clear the air before it was too late. For many viewers, Melissa Sue Anderson will always be Mary Ingalls. She was only a teenager when she stepped into that role in 1974, but it did not take long for people to notice what she could do. By 1978, her work earned her an Emmy nomination, the only one among the main cast. Viewers watched Mary lose her eyesight over time, a storyline that gave Anderson some of her strongest material, but also set a pattern of hardship. From the start, Mary was never meant to carry the show in the same way Laura did. There were long stretches when Anderson had little to do. When the blindness storyline came in season 4, it changed that, but it did not last. As she got older, the imbalance became harder to ignore. Anderson later reflected on how it became either standing in the background or moving through another difficult situation. She stayed through season 7 and appeared briefly in season 8, but by then she wanted something more. Behind the scenes, her relationship with Landon carried quiet complexity. It stayed professional, but there was a distance that grew over time. Landon expected a lot from everyone, and for someone like Anderson, who already kept to herself, that created an isolating space. There was respect there she recognized as talent, but the experience was not always comfortable. The man who played the dependable father figure carried a different energy when the cameras were not rolling. After leaving the show, she moved into other projects, including guest roles in Chips, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. Over time, she began to pull back, choosing to focus on her family. In her memoir, The Way I See It, she acknowledged both sides of the experience. Her view of Landon settled into something more balanced. By the time he passed away in 1991, She had made peace with much of what had come before. She attended his funeral, closing a chapter that had once felt complicated. Who was your favorite character on Little House on the Prairie? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.